Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Welcome back. If you're into true crime, you like to cut past all the fluff, the sensationalism, you found the right place. I'm glad you have. My name is Gavin. Thank you for being here. After doing that little intro, tonight we are going to be kind of back into speculation land. We're just going to have a conversation. That's all I've got planned for tonight. And I'm hoping that you guys will be very active over in the comments. The first comment that I saw as I was getting ready for this was this from Anonymous. I was in the courtroom most days, and I believe this is the proper verdict based on what happened in the courtroom. I know others are upset based on emotion, but this was the proper verdict in my eyes. Of course, we are talking about the prosecution of Richard Allen, who was charged in the murder of 13-year-old Abigail Williams and 14-year-old her friend Liberty German, who they were both murdered back in February of 2017. Mr. Allen was found guilty on all 4 counts today, and I just want to go over a little bit the case. You guys can put GF in your comment if you want me to be able to see the comment. That's how it highlights for me. So please do that. I also want to quickly direct you over to my website. Now, I have to say, I have not stayed as up to date on this case page for Abby and Libby as I should have, but there is a lot of information that you can find here on the case page, gavinfish.com, and then just go to cases and go to Abby and Libby. Okay. So first, just a quick, I thought I would give you, I took some notes. I thought I'd give you a couple things that I've noticed in the case. Okay. Number one, Judge Francis Gohl did not allow the defense, Misters Rossi and Baldwin, pictured here. But the defense had, basically they had 2 defenses here, 2 defense strategies here. And we all know that this has been just a cluster, right? This whole trial has been a circus. It's been a media circus. And, man, there's just been so much. And we've discussed it at length here on the channel. But there were 2 proposed defense theories. Number one, let's see. The first one was that the girls were murdered as part of an Odinist ritual, and that, I mean, they claim that there were symbols at the crime scene that that kind of indicated that direction. Judge Gohl did not allow that from attorneys Baldwin and Rossi. She said that they weren't able to prove that this whole Odinism thing was connected enough to the case. The second theory that they had was, they were, and this is a valid defense. So I guess the second defense was to show other specific people could have committed the crime, that Mr. Allen did not commit the crime because these people did. Again, Judge Gohl did not allow that defense. Now, just based on my personal experience, and I'm a lay person, I'm not a lawyer, I do not work in the legal system, I am simply an outside spectator on this. Judges, especially on the trial level, they pride themselves on whether or not their rulings are successfully appealed or not. Obviously, they want their rulings to not be successfully appealed. I've told you guys this on the channel before, that I once went to like the portrait hanging of a trial judge here in my home county, and he was like, I always wanted to be right on the law, and I am proud to say that after X many decades on the bench, not a single appeal has been successful based on one of my rulings. So that is an indication that Judge Gull, like that's what she would pride herself on. I don't know if maybe the fact that Judge Gull excluded both of these different defenses, if that would have led to a guilty verdict, like directly to a guilty verdict. I don't know, but I do think that these are two things that attorneys Baldwin and Rozzi will be able to argue on appeal. Specifically, I think what they'll be able to say is that excluding, for example, the Odinism defense violated Mr. Allen's Sixth Amendment right, and therefore, they should have some sort of appeal. I'm wondering why they didn't have some sort of interlocutory appeal, but that's what I think is the main thing. Now, what was the prosecution's case? The prosecution's case was that they had a couple of different things. Number one, they had that unspent bullet, right? It was found between the victims, and it was apparently linked forensically to Mr. Allen's Sig Sauer P226. I have seen on, on Twitter, people that I follow that are forensic investigators have said that is kind of, it's not like DNA, or it's not like ballistic forensics or imprint forensics. It's kind of iffy whether a gun can be matched to an unspent bullet. It's obviously, I think the jury was convinced of that. The prosecution had the video and audio evidence, right, from Libby German's phone, the recorded video of Bridge Guy, and the audio saying "guys down the hill," which the prosecution argued that voice matched Allen's voice. They had the confession the multiple confessions. I think there were 60 or 61 confessions that Mr. Allen made while in prison. Most of those, or many of those, were phone calls to his wife, conversation with prison or correctional staff. Of course, the defense argued that he was under a lot of duress. He may have gone into some kind of psychosis because he was in protective custody, which ultimately meant that he was alone for 23, 24 hours a day. And that psychological distress is what led to those confessions, maybe him thinking that he could get out if he just confessed. And then there were witness testimonies, right? There were eyewitnesses on the trails. Two people who saw Bridge Guy on February 13th, 2017, who said that, Bridge Guy was Mr. Allen. Family members testified. Law enforcement testified. They made a timeline from Libby's phone data, bloodstain patterns showing that the bodies had been moved. There was forensic experts. There was just so much. And then, of course, those correctional facility staff that testified to Mr. Allen's confessions and also talked about his mental state. There was a psychologist that testified. There was just so much going on here. Now, keep in mind, guys, I want to get to your comments here. We're mostly going to talk about your comments. I'm more interested in your comments and your opinions than your questions on this one. But ultimately, Mr. Allen was found guilty on 4 counts: the murder of Abby, the murder of Libby, and then felony murder while committing the kidnapping of each Abby and Libby. So sentencing is scheduled for December 20th. There will have to be a pre-sentencing investigation report that is generated prior to the sentencing. I have heard that he faces a potential of 130 to 140 years in prison. It's really hard to say whether those will be concurrent or either combined all together, served concurrently, or successively. Man, I'm having a hard time with my language there, but it's really difficult to say what it is that he is going to face. I think no matter what, he'll spend the rest of his life in jail, I think. Now, with that little intro out of the way, 10-minute intro, let me just go through a couple of your comments. Let's see. Give me just a second here to clear my screen. Lee T, this was the second comment that I saw. Justice finally done for Abby and Libby. May their families have some measure of peace. Yes, indeed. LS, aka Chester's mom. I wish this stream would be a celebration that Abby and Libby got justice. I love this channel, and this is an important day for these girls. Yeah, I have to say that I was not in the courtroom, so I really am only going by the reports and the commentary that I watched afterwards. I really appreciated Anonymous's comment saying that they were in the courtroom. And, after 5 years, holy cow, longer than that. What are we at? We're almost 8 years on this case. I bet Abby and Libby's family are feeling some sense of relief, right? There's never going to be, for them, a celebration, right? They lost their daughters. I've talked to many a family after their loved one's murderer has been convicted, and none of them feel good. None of them feel good about it. They all feel conflicted about it. They're glad that the justice has been done, but it never brings back the victims. So, yeah. So I guess what I'm saying is I don't know if this is the right verdict or not. I do believe in our justice system. I believe deeply that our justice system is the best that the world has come up with so far. Having said that, I also know that there are flaws in it, and this one has been pretty flawed. So I think Gavin is a waffler on this one, but I'm leaning more toward the gratitude that Abby and Libby have gotten justice. And I hope deeply, deep down in my heart, that this was the right verdict. Let me get this to refresh here. Media circus without the media. I think, I would much rather have openness in the legal system, but I also recognize what the artifacts that it leads to, what are the artifacts of that openness, cameras in the courtroom and so forth. I really wish, I really wish that we could have seen the actual trial. Hand of Ike, Gavin, I don't want to muddy the tank as I love my fellow fishies, and this is a very polarizing case for the true crime community, but I'm 100% sure the jury got this correct today. I'm glad you feel that way. Alice in Oregon Land saying, OJ trial was a media circus, Delphi was not. I don't know. I mean, it was different for sure because obviously cameras weren't in the courtroom, but an entire subgenre of the true crime community was spawned out of this case. And I think it's probably born out of deep concern. I don't think that there's anything nefarious about it, but man, there was a lot of commentary on this, including from myself. I include myself in that. Right. So, I feel like I'm going to respectfully disagree with Alice in Oregon Land. Gavin, what is Odinism? Okay. Odinism, from what I understand, is a religious belief based on like ancient Norse gods. And the idea is that in the modern era, there are people that are worshiping Odin, and apparently are making human sacrifices to that Norse god. I kind of feel like it was a stretch, but it still might be grounds for appeal. I mean, they weren't able to bring their entire defense here. And the thing that's important about that, I think there should be important about that to all of us guys, is that we want fidelity in the justice system. And therefore, we want defendants, whether they are guilty or not, to have the best defense possible. Because we want that fidelity. We don't want to just easily send people to their, the rest of their life in prison, or in some cases to the death penalty. We don't want that without there being serious consideration. The burden, the standard of proof of beyond reasonable doubt is a high standard. And if the jury feels like the prosecution made their standard, then that's why they came back with that verdict. I'm glad that they took several days to deliberate. Like, they took it seriously, right? They deliberated seriously, weighed everything that they had seen. And in cases like this where, well, in almost all cases, murder cases, there's going to be conflicting testimony, right? And it is not the judge's job, it is the jury's job to judge the facts and the credibility. So when they are listening to testimony that may conflict, they have to decide, I believe that person more than I believe that person or those people. And so, that's a really hard job to do. And I hope they did it well. And Zach says, bottom line, whether we think the jury got it right or wrong, the process worked as intended and we have justice. I think I don't think I could have said it better than that. Kelly Jensen, Gavin, it came out in the trial he was not alone. He started out with a cellmate, and then it transitioned to a jail staff member being with him. He had a therapy session daily and got to go exercise. All right, I stand corrected. I guess what I was saying is what others have argued, that he was basically in solitary for some time. But yeah, if that's what it said in the trial. Thanks, Kelly. Nifty 50 says, I've never thought he was guilty. I believe his confessions were due to stress. He said he shot them. That is how they died. And other things don't add up. It's also possible, and I'm not saying you're saying this, Nifty, but it's also possible that he gave weird false confessions under duress and was also guilty. That's possible too, right? That's one of those things where the jury's job is to be the judge of the facts of the case. It's a heavy burden, I have to tell you. I bet there are people watching that have been jury members. You guys know I have been on a pretty serious case on a double homicide. So yeah, it's a heavy burden, and it might be possible that he confessed due to stress, as Nifty says, but is also guilty. Possible. Let's see. Mooney says that she thinks that there are many who agree with your opinion. Yeah. Let me keep going. Sorry, it just refreshed on me one more time. Yeah, Boston transitional character, not a speck of DNA or blood in his car after committing the crime, another huge hole. That's what I understand. Of course, I wasn't in the trial, but yeah, that does seem odd on its face, though not impossible. Yeah, good comment. Cassie makes me feel better about myself by saying I've been a waffler on this case too. I just think there were too many things pointing to Richard Allen being bridge guy to be a coincidence. Okay. Content angel. Huh. Talking about the Koberger case. That's an interesting comment. Women's Warrior, Gavin, Lauren is thinking it is from Hidden True Crime has said that there are things that we don't know, and she's going to speak about them soon as she can. There has been a big hold over the whole town. Okay. Can't wait to find out what that is. Gavin, whatever happened to the bigger guy that was known to have texted Libby the day she died that was charged for CP? I do not know. I don't know. And, that actually brings up something to think about. There are so many things that the jury wasn't told because of the rules of our legal system. A lot of the things that we have been told, you and I, as true crime enthusiasts, that may be completely 100% true, may be completely 100% untrue, and everything in between. So it's important to have that jury that is unbiased by all the stuff that has been happening on social media and in the news and on cable shows and so forth. I doubt that that was ever shown to the jury. Maybe you guys know and can tell me I'm wrong. Alice in Oregonland, cameras won't always be allowed in the courtroom. Yeah, in many places there are no cameras in the courtroom. It's really the states that are the most transparent, like they err to that side. That's why we see so many cases out of Florida and Utah and Idaho, because those are states that allow cameras in the court, and that is why the media, including myself, are drawn to them. Right? In the great state of Pennsylvania, where I live, no cameras in the courtroom, period. I had to get a special dispensation one time to take, I wanted to take stock photography of the courtrooms in Western Pennsylvania. I traveled around to the different courthouses, and that was a months long effort with court administration to get it so that I could be allowed to take a camera into an empty courtroom. So just to take photos of the jury box and the room and the artwork and all that stuff, right? So Pennsylvania has very strict rules about no cameras, nothing that can broadcast, nothing that can record, nothing electronic in a courtroom. Like I was covering a case, what was that, 3 or 4 weeks ago, where I had everything turned off, put away in a bag, and I still had a deputy come up to me and say, we need to get this out of the courtroom. Right? Like people that know me and know that I don't break the rules. I was really grateful that they treated me so professionally. But yeah, I think in most places here in the United States, cameras are not allowed in the courtroom. Nifty 50, an appeal is what I'm hoping for, and I hope he's given a new trial. And please don't get me wrong. 2 precious girls lost their lives. I just believe they got the wrong man. I hope they got the right man. I really do. Hoosier says, Gavin, short version, Richard Allen put himself on scene. He described the clothing he wore as that worn by Bridge Guy. Many witnesses saw Bridge Guy. Only person who did not see Bridge Guy was Richard Allen. Why? Because he is Bridge Guy. That's a good comment. But then Boston says, Gavin, also no blood on his jacket either, or his car. Let's see. Woman's Warrior. Gavin, I've been wondering if it was SRA rather than Odin. This is controversial. There are victims. It does go on, but it's highly covered up. I don't think he did this. I think he stumbled upon it. I have to admit, I don't know what SRA is. You guys are probably like screaming at your computers right now or your phones. Let me just see if I can look this up. No. Satanic. Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah, maybe. Maybe. Gotcha. Let's see. Kathy asks, Gavin, in my mind, reasonable doubt, even with confessions possibly under mental distress, no DNA, months of investigatory material loss, Elvis confessed to his sister with details and named Abby. So, Kathy, you're saying that is the reasonable doubt. By the way, I should be showing our girls here a little more. There's little Miss Abby. Let me scroll back up. Here we go. Okay, Gavin, he had an S-Watch companion, okay, which was first fellow inmates, then were employees of the jail. His therapist, Dr. Walla, did see him daily, but was also telling him stuff about the case. I see. Gavin, I think Richard started in with several shenanigans as soon as he got arrested. Like he was trying to mess up the case, you think? I mean, that's possible. Maybe he's playing seven-dimensional chess and we're all behind him. Okay, Keegan Kline was found guilty and is in prison. Thank you for that, Kelly. Zach, they don't even let you take your phone into the courthouse in Lancaster County. Yeah, that is a hill that I will die on that one, because in Pennsylvania, the courtrooms are private and the hearing rooms are private, but the courthouse is not. And that's one of those that I've actually had to talk to the sheriff himself. Like, listen, I'm going to go to the Prothonotary, or I'm going to the, whatever office. I may have my phone in the courthouse, and luckily I live in a place where I know everybody, including the sheriffs. And anyway, yeah, you got to be careful in Pennsylvania. Limer asks, Gavin, what are your thoughts on the case on the matter of there being other people involved? If R.A. is the man, do you think others were involved? Limer, I'm sorry to disappoint here, but I do have no opinion on that. Like, I know of people, and I know people that believe that there were multiple people involved in this, and that Richard Allen has a frame around his neck on this one. It wouldn't surprise me if there are multiple people. From the prosecutor's point of view, though, like the prosecutor's number one, love to prosecute crimes. Number two, the main attorney is going to be a politician, let's say, and an elected official. So they're wanting a conviction. It's kind of weird the way the incentives kind of align on this. And I'm a big Freakonomics fan. Incentives are everything to me. The prosecutor just wants to prosecute and wants to get a conviction and wants to be able to tell people in his state or in his district, hey, you can reelect me because look at the great things that I've done. Now, that's not to say that they don't have other things that incentivize them, their personal ethics, their morals, their whatever guidelines they set for themselves. Those are also incentives. But if they can get one guy and then just say, we got our guy, I think that they probably would do that and move along. I think the incentives would, I wouldn't say they would for sure do that. I'm just saying, I think the incentives are strong enough for them to just move along after that. Let's see. Just because they found that video, or so-called found that video of Bridge Guy on her phone, doesn't mean that was the guy that killed them. So I wasn't in court, but maybe somebody can help us. Did they play in court the full video on on Libby's phone? My guess is they would have. they would have done that. I mean, sometimes I sit through trials where I'm like falling asleep because we have to watch 3 hours of badge cam video because they want the jury to know they didn't edit anything. So I'd imagine they would have seen the whole thing. I think the prosecution's theory that Bridge Guy is the murderer would have to be supported by some kind of evidence that they could show the jury. So I think Bridge Guy probably is the murderer. Who's your yep? Keegan Klein, thank you. 43-year-old sentence. Or 43-year sentence. Sorry about that. Oh, yeah. Gavin, in this case, it was a mess since the defense had evidence there on their table photographs. It was put on YouTube. Yeah. Yep. Let's see. I'm just going to keep on going here. You guys are awesome. Even law enforcement said there were tentacles and very complicated, that it reached far wider than FBI was told to take a hike. Okay. So they did show that video multiple times. Thank you. Gavin, once everyone hears the audio of the court case, they will learn how badly this investigation was and how even if he's guilty, it would be impossible to prove. Well, I mean, except that they did prove to the jurors beyond a reasonable doubt, right? Gavin, what are your thoughts about R.A. Richard Allen being in prison before being convicted for his safety, supposedly, since he's on S-Watch? I actually don't have a problem with it, guys. I know that some people do. And I think that the justification for that, for that opinion, is that jails are somehow easier than prisons, and I don't think that that's necessarily true. I think that I think it was fine. I really do. He had to have access to an attorney privately. He had to be, defended, or I guess prevented from, or his security had to be addressed and those sorts of things. But I was okay with him being in a state prison, just because I know about what goes on in county jails, and they're no picnic. It can get really ugly in those. Let's see. I think I've got most of your comments here. I think I've got everything. Myrna is saying, Gavin, people are expecting DNA proves he was arrested 5 years later. I think it does proves, or DNA. I'm not following what you're saying, Myrna, but greetings to Puerto Rico. Thank you very much. Jennifer says, I'd love to see the unedited video from her phone, not the improved versions. Guys, I think I'm glad for all the opinions that you guys have shared with me today. I do think that there are always going to be questions on this case, whether or not Richard Allen really was the guy who murdered Abby and Libby. If there are appealable rulings, if there's anything appealable in the case, I hope that they will be appealed vigorously, because again, the justice system, it's the system that is most important, and it's not, and I don't mean that it's most important to conserve as is. What's most important is that it be just most of the time, right? Like ideally all of the time. And so the better we can make the justice system, the better. And so if there are items in the case that are appealable, I hope that they are vigorously appealed, and that the appellate courts will take a close look. In the meantime, I do think that I hope that the families of Abby and Libby can maybe rest a little easier, now that Mr. Allen has been convicted. I hope that he is the right person, that he did do that. I mean, I'm not glad that he did or wish that he would have. Just saying that I hope that he is the person that did it and that justice was served today. Hey, tomorrow we're going to circle back around to the Madeline Soto case. I've been scheduling some videos and I've swapped them around a little bit. So tomorrow, sí, hold on. Mirna. Que en 5 años las pruebas de DNA debieron haber desaparecido. Okay, that's what you're saying. Okay, so what she's saying is that, oh, I didn't show you this. Sorry, guys. What Mirna is asking is like after 5 years, maybe the DNA got so basically the DNA disappeared, right? It's possible, though. I think when police, okay. I'm sorry I'm struggling with my words today, but I've got a friend who is a professor of genetics and genomics at Penn State Barrett. Very smart guy. He's been on the channel before. I hope to have him back sometime soon because he's just absolutely a fascinating guy and very, very smart. What he has explained to me is that DNA does well, like it does not degrade as long as it is dry and as long as it is cool. So what law enforcement does is when they test for DNA, they swab it and the first thing they do is they dry it out and then they keep it in a cool place to keep that DNA good. Now, as long as those two things are true, like if it's dry and cool, then 10,000 years from now, they will be able to test that DNA and it'll light up. So I don't think after 5 years of the DNA that the police have collected that it would somehow degrade. 5 years, I don't think so. I think it would be okay. That's just my opinion. Thanks, Mirna, for saying that in Spanish so I could understand what you're saying. All right, guys. So tomorrow, real quick, before we go, head on over to the website to see what I've got on the Abby and Libby case. Also, while you're there, click on CrimeCod and subscribe to my newsletter if that's your deal. Certainly don't have to if you don't want emails, but all I do is every once in a while when I've got something, a new blog post or a new video, something that I want you to look at or that I think you might be interested in looking at, I will send out an email. I think in October I sent out 2 or 3. So far in November I've sent out a couple. So I'm not spamming you. I don't sell the list. I don't do any of that. So if true crime is your deal and you would like to get a newsletter, go ahead and do that. Also, don't forget that you can go over to the Fish Tank where we talk about stuff like this. For example, Pat today was saying that Pat says, in my opinion, I'm not sure they got the right one. Many think because he confessed. So we've had this conversation over on the Fish Tank. So if you're on Facebook, just search the Fish Tank and join 2,800 of your closest true crime friends. Remember that my mods moderate voluntarily. If you want to take care of them, go ahead and go over to the support page, click on this button, buy my mods a coffee. That is deeply appreciated always. This cough doesn't want to go. Okay, so tomorrow, excuse me, guys. Tomorrow, we're coming back to the Maddie Soto case. We're going to talk a little bit about Mr. Stearns and why I believe this is never going to go to trial. So if that's a conversation that you are interested in, please join me tomorrow, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And until then, I bid you adieu. Hope to see you then. Take care of yourselves. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you liked what you saw, please consider subscribing. And if you have any questions or comments, please leave them below.